Welcome to the 11th Jaipur Literature Festival at Darbar Hall. We are delighted to introduce our first session of the day, the last of the tattooed Headhunters, Peter Boss and Phejin Konyak, introduced by Ma Thida. Please welcome our speakers on stage with a loud round of applause. Ma Thida is a Burmese medical doctor, writer, human rights activist. She was awarded several international human rights awards, including the Reebok Human Rights Award, the Penn Barbara Goldsmith Freedom to Write Award, the Freedom of Speech Award, and the Václav Havel's Courageous Writer at Risk Award. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody, and I'd be thrilled to have this opportunity to introduce our very distinguished writer, Phejin Konyak, and the photographer, Peter Boss. The background knowledge of, my own background knowledge about the headhunting and tattooing of the Konyak people is so little and so much limited. But I really believe through our speakers and photographers, we can dig enough to the society of Konyak. And this was like as far as I know, the Konyak people, the headhunting and tattooing is their way of life in the past. But because of the new religious introduction or the colonialisms, their tradition has been nearly vanished. So with the writer Phejin, she went back to the community and dig enough about her own great-grandfather and the society. So I really honored to introduce both of you, and I think Phejin will start with how you started deciding to write this book with the help of Peter.
Good morning. Thank you for turning up. This is a long way from where we started to be here in Jaipur and sitting here and sharing about our work. So our research took us 4 years. We started in 2014, and so we started by walking through jungle footpaths, through villages, and then finally with the book. We'll start the slideshow.
And now there will be a map showing on the screen.
Can we see?
No. Not yet.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So when you look at this image, where do you think the person would be from? New Zealand. And? Papua New Guinea. And? South America. Indonesia. And so do you think that this would be a tribe from India? Before this? So this shows how diverse the country is, how diverse the people in India are. This is a part of a culture that is vanishing, a tradition that is vanishing, which we have documented. So I am Phejin Konyak, and I belong to the Konyak tribe, and I will show you about our journey. We can switch on to the map. Yeah. So Nagaland is in the northeastern tip of India, bordering Myanmar, and Mon District is on the northern part of Nagaland. So on the map, for those persons who have not heard about Nagaland before, this is on the map. Then the slideshow can happen. Yeah. So who are the Konyaks? The Konyaks belong to the Naga ethnic group. They inhabit Mon District of Nagaland. and they are spread in India and Myanmar. And for centuries, we have been crossing from, there's been no boundary. People have been living freely, having intermarriage relations and lineages, sharing lineages and moving from one part of the country to another. But because of the geopolitical demarcation, we have been now divided into India and Myanmar. The Konyaks, they practice headhunting and tattooing, and that's the reason maybe why we have been isolated for a long time. Headhunting and tattooing were the most important part of our tradition until the first ethnographers came, and then the missionaries arrived, and then the exposure to the outside world brought in the changes. And with those changes came the lifestyle, modern lifestyle. And sadly, the tattooing culture also had to come to an end in the 60s because of this. The reason why, because people wanted to blend in with the general population, wanted to be accepted by outsiders. So that is why our tattooing practice also dwindled down, and the subjects which we have documented in this book are the last bearers of this art.
So I think Peter, as a photographer from Holland, and you just told me that you have so much inspirations from your Dutch great artists like Rembrandt, Van Gogh, so and so. So now we look at the photographs, and how do you inspire by taking these photographs about the Konyak people?
No, well, I was in the Netherlands. I did some research on the internet, and I was really fascinating about tribal life in the northeast. And then I came across the Konyaks and their prominent facial tattoos and the stories behind them of headhunting. And of course, for me, it's like a very exotic subject, headhunting, tattooing, and as a portrait photographer, it is like, a beautiful subject to photograph. But also the story behind it is very fascinating. And then I set out to Nagaland. I started portraiting them. I went to a village, and I came across Phejin on the internet, but she was not there at the moment. So after a week, I got a message from Phejin, please come to my farm stay, I want to meet you, and that sounded good. And then she explained me her idea about documenting her tribe, about documenting all the tattoo patterns, traditions that defines the tribe. And that sounded like music to my ears, so we set out on a journey together. And then we traveled from village to village, and we started hearing their stories, hearing their tales, and I was documenting the last old warriors and their women. And that's just how we set out to do. And also, but I a lot of time hear about headhunting is like a sensitive subject, but when you really learn the story behind it, you see how deep it goes, how much more spiritual it actually is. And maybe Phejin can say something
please.
about that.
Headhunting, it's not something that is like normally discussed, and the reason why, like I said earlier, that headhunting and tattooing were interconnected. It was the part of what defined the Konyak society. It defined our individuality. Headhunting was done because of our people believe in fertility benefit of for the village or for the crops or for life, and also for tattooing. So men, when a man enters the age of puberty, they had to go through a compulsory rite of passage, and because of that, they would participate in the headhunting raid and then get the prominent facial tattoos.
So only after the headhunting, they do the tattooing
Yes.
for the men.
Yes.
For women, how do they have the tattoo?
for the woman, it was a cycle of life. It defined a woman's passing of age from one stage of life to other, from a child to adolescence to late teens, to getting engaged, to getting married, and then giving birth. So each tattoo pattern mark her passing of one stage of life to the other.
I also noticed all the tattoo patterns are more or less geometrical.
Yes.
So is that some hidden meanings, or how? It's pretty hard to make this very geometrical pattern.
Our tattoo patterns are inspired by our bamboo weaves, our house building, and our most of it, like I said, it's geometric patterns, diamond shapes. So it is inspired by the nature around us, in the basket weaving or house weaving, everyday life.
And I also wonder, you use the name of the tribe as your surname.
Yes.
So is there a tradition for everybody, every individual in your tribes to keep your tribe name as your surname? Or, yeah, it's very interesting to me.
My sisters and I, we were one of the first few Konyaks to be sent to a Catholic convent school. And at that time, there were very few people from our tribe who would be sent outside for education. And my parents, not my parents, because my parents never went to school. So my uncle, my dad's brother, who's my guardian, he put my name as Phejin Konyak to identify me and my sisters from the rest of the other Naga children, because we were put with other tribal children. But my tribe was seen as a backward tribe, like a less modern. So we were one of the few people. So to identify us, they put us Phejin Konyak.
Yeah, and I wonder how much time did you spend to writing the books, taking the photographs, and making the books in this? How long did it take?
Altogether, it took about 3.5, 4 years to come to the result as a book. And Phejin started before me, like 1 year before. She was already like gathering information and stories. And then I came along and we went together. Yeah.
If I think or we think about our journey, it is like unbelievable that we are sitting here at Jaipur Literature Festival and sharing about our work. Because I started with my backpack, walking from village to village, and most of the villages don't have motor roads. We have to walk by foot, carrying our ration like rice or milk powder or meat or everything. And most of these villages are not connected, so we have to walk, and there are also no shops in the villages, so we have to carry medicines and everything. And very basic. But we went meeting all the old people in the villages. And then they are surprised that someone wanted to talk to them, to listen to their stories. They said, what possibly can you find any interesting thing in me? That is what our subjects would tell us. They said, this is the first time that someone is genuinely interested to know our stories, our background. And so that is how we began. The idea was not a book. It was just like documenting the different type of tattoo patterns, just collecting in a notebook, and then taking photographs on my phone or iPad, and just taking down notes. And the idea was not a book. Then after collecting all the stories and the patterns and the interviews, then I said, maybe this can also, if a photographer is there, then it can, visually it can be represented. So it turned out to a book later on. So.
Yeah, now the strangest thing is also what I encounter with engaging with the local community there, that the younger generation is completely almost not interested in the old ways, the old traditions. You only look ahead. And also what Phejin said, when we're talking about the old people and asking them about their past, asking about how they get their tattoos, they were surprised that people were interested in that. Nagaland has been, especially also the Mon District, has been like in a state of hyper development 50 years ago, there was still headhunting taking place, and now they have smartphones. 50 years ago, there were animists, and now they are Christians. And 50 years ago, they were like an oral tradition, and now they have like regular education. So the development has been so quick and so fast that also with the coming of Christianity, they taught the youth that the old ways are like bad and the new ways are good. The old ways are like hidden and the new ways is the way forward. So somehow they ignore or they don't pay attention anymore to the old ways. And for me it was quite strange to experience that.
In fact, when we went interacting with the old people, they say, oh, my son never asked me that question. My granddaughter or grandson never asked me the question. Why are you so interested in knowing about me? And then when we would ask them about their first tattooing day. Maybe the girl, she was 7 years old then. And then she could recollect about her parents and then her sisters. And then our subjects would start crying because they remember that day so well, you know. And so it was like not just a book, it was a different kind of universe that we entered by interacting with this, with our subjects. Talking about why our people, Peter just said about hyper development in the society. It's not only in material things, but it's also a mental, social thing that when the development happens so fast and that with the new changes, our people have been, I won't call it brainwashed, but our people have been like made to think that the thing that we have of the past, our culture, our tradition, is something that is to be ashamed of. It's something that is, it's not good, you know? We have to look forward. So that is the reason why many, the generation is not interested.
Oh, yeah. So are there any local media of the Nagaland talking about this tribe or not throughout these days?
Very relaxed people, very few people we have met who are also doing something to document all this, because it is our subjects that you see on the slideshow, the photographs, over the years, many of them have passed away. Oh. Even as we speak now. Last week, one of the last tattoo artists, she passed away. I got a message on the way to Jaipur that she passed away. They are the people in our subjects, the subjects in our book are living libraries. With them will die the tradition of songs and sayings and poems, because it is an oral tradition. Nothing has been written down until our documentation. It's not being written down. So with them will die the poems and songs and sayings.
How big the community, the Konyak populations, percentage of the whole Nagaland, how big the community it is?
I would say we are about 10% of the population.
10% of the population. Are there any representations at the legislative level or administrative level?
Yes, there's.
So there are no kind of the informations available for the rest 90% population about your tribes, or how do they?
There is information available, but like we were just saying that everybody is focusing on new things.
I see.
Even in the schools, when I was growing up, I only learned about nursery rhymes and also about stories of Snow White or Mahabharata or Goldilocks or other stories from the outside, but there's never been a story from our people. None of our local heroes and heroines or myths and legends. And until now, there's nothing available for the young people.
Yeah, I'm really interested in how you notice about this is very first experience for Peter. So how do you think of this kind of the gap between the old generation and young generation of Konyak, and the Konyak gap between the Konyak society versus the rest of the Nagaland society? How do you think?
Yeah, for me, I come there because I'm very interested in the old ways and very interested for me, in a strange and new way. So I'm always asking questions about the old tradition, and then also for me it's like very strange that people are not so much interested in it, and they are very surprised that I'm very interested in it. And also, I think knowing one's roots is like very essence of knowing your own identity. I don't think you can just ignore and forget your own roots and go on with it. I think what I felt also in Nagaland, and I talked to a lot of other musicians, artists, is that there's some kind of identity crisis going on at the moment in Nagaland among all the tribes because of this strange way of cultural shift. And so we actually also hope with the book, we have captured a lot of oral traditions, stories, myths, poems. They're also written in the book, but this is one book. It's like the coffee table book, but we were intending to make more books. One book is like a local version of the coffee table book in local Konyak dialect. That it will also be affordable for everybody in Mon District for the Cognacs. And also like an illustrated children's book where all the songs and poems and myths will be illustrated for the children in English and in Konyak language, so it will be accessible to every generations in the futures to come. And what we hope is that that artists, musicians, tattoo artists will also be influenced or take inspiration out of the pictures and the work and the songs and poems, that they can incorporate it in their new style, some kind of contemporary art work, that the old traditions get a new form but stay alive. And I think that's one of our, maybe that is the main goal from the work we did.
Yeah, how do you think?
Maybe the audience will want to ask questions.
Okay, yeah, you want to start?
If they want to ask questions.
Okay, yeah, you want to start?
Maybe you can tell about the great-grandfather, because actually there's quite an ironical twist on the book, because her great-grandfather was quite a known man in the Konyak tribe, and maybe you can say about the story about your great-grandfather and the retracing of his footsteps.
My great-grandfather, his name was Ahon, and he was also a fully facial tattooed man. I've never met him, of course, because he's my great-grandfather, but as a child, I heard about my family or villagers or people in the tribe speaking about him. And then I didn't know that it went deeper into the story that I heard behind him until I started the research. When I went through the archives from the Cambridge Museum and also from the Pitt Rivers Museum, reading their data, I came across my great-grandfather's name. My great-grandfather, he was the interpreter for JH Hutton in the 1920s. They toured, he was interpreter for him, for the British ethnographer JH Hutton. They toured the Naga Hills together, and they encouraged to stop the practice of headhunting. At that time, villagers were at constant war with each other. There was no peace. So my great-grandfather and JH Hutton, they toured the area and they encouraged people to stop headhunting. But because of the end of headhunting, the end of tattooing also happened. Because headhunting and tattooing were interconnected. And ironically, 100 years down the line, I happen to be the one documenting this tattoo tradition.
How it's related? After headhunting, do the tattoo, or how it's related? What's the connection, the real agenda behind?
The main reason headhunting is done is for pure rite of passage of the men when they enter teenager years. They have to join the men's club, and they have to go participate in the headhunting raid. And after they are successful, then they get their facial tattoos.
Oh, so all the facial tattoos represents how They are good at head hunting,
Yes, yes.
something that rewards.
Yes.
Okay.
But the person who has taken more heads will get more tattoos all over the body. It's like attaining a gold medal, silver medal, or bronze medal in the
Yeah,
Olympic.
permanent medal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the more because at that time people were naked, they did not wear clothes, so the tattoo was all over the body. The body was a canvas, so the tattoo patterns that a person carry on the body depicted the status of that person, and likewise for women, it depicted whether a woman is married or unmarried, whether she's entered her puberty, or whether she belongs to the common clan or the nobility. So tattoos all differentiate between a common man and a noble man, a warrior with a common man, a married woman with an unmarried woman. It also depicted sexual maturity. So all these kinds of designs.
Okay. So after vanishings of the headhunting practice, are there still practice of tattooing to men and to women? No more.
No more.
So for women, they're not doing any headhunting, but they can keep doing the tattooing, right?
Yes.
So
But but because of Christianity. And also the thing is that our people, we were isolated for a very long time. But after interaction with the outside world, we also wanted to blend in with everybody. We didn't want to have a facial tattoo. Because if you have a facial tattoo, you will stand out. So if you wanted to interact with the people in the plains, we had to look like them, you know. And also, it was a very painful process. Individuals don't have a say because every Konyak person, it was a mandatory, compulsory to have a tattoo because we believe that we will not enter the afterlife of our ancestors if we don't have tattoo on our body. And so it was compulsory, but the Students' Union banned it in 1960, saying that it is torture and individuals don't have a say in it. So now we will stop this tradition.
So no one's practice anymore?
No one practice. In fact, there are only the last tattoo artists who are now already in their late 80s, the traditional Konyak tattoo artists. One passed away last week, now another one is there. Only handful remaining now.
Yeah. But you still practice the language, keep the language?
Yes.
Yeah. And are there any plans to make a kind of the video recording, not just the printing form? We do need to keep the songs, so any plan?
While we were going around, we also recorded the songs and video and sayings and poems. So we have also a lot of video data material, but it doesn't fit in the book, of course. But maybe for a later stage, we're doing something with it. We don't have any concrete plans with that so far. Yeah.
The Konyak headhunting and tattooing also had stories and folktale and songs and sayings behind it. So we are documenting all.
Can you a little bit reading part of the song or the poetry?
My great-grandmother, my grand-aunt, she passed away in August this year. She was also a tattooed woman. She recited this poem for us when we were recording. It is when we were documenting this story. It is also on the video, but I have put it in the book.
Yeah.
Shall I do it in
Please,
English?
please.
English and
Both.
both.
Yeah.
It says in the Shiyong dialect, it says, "Sali panang long jasa, olak sesim panang jakwan kang hihwa, song pum yakya rongbi kang han san ying lay, pang pa let ju san lay." Oh, that was in our language, but in English it says, "The stone does not die, the earth does not stop breathing, the worms can never eat up the sun, the moon will always show her face, but man will fade away."
Wow.
My grandmother said, yeah. So on my grand-aunt's funeral, I recite this poem for my family because my parents' generation don't know these songs and sayings anymore. They are influenced by modernity and Christianity. So only the last tattooed people know all these songs and sayings. It is very sad indeed.
Do you want to add something, or should I?
Maybe some questions?
Yeah, I was, over there. And, okay, here also, after that, yeah.
There we go. Thank you so much to both of you for your work. This is a question for Peter. As a photographer and as someone outside the Konyak people, you said that your introduction to these people was online. It seemed very exotic to you. So I wonder, in your work as a photographer and as someone outside the Konyak people, how you keep yourself from exoticizing your subjects, from making your project one of voyeurism, but documentation from the inside.
Can you repeat it?
Sure. You said that your introduction to the Konyak people was online. It seemed like something very exotic.
Yeah.
So I wonder how, as a photographer, you can approach your subject without exoticizing them. How you prevent yourself from becoming a kind of voyeuristic gaze, but a documentation from the inside.
Yeah, there's always like a very fine balance between the two. So I be there, but I always have to be careful not to put my own image on that person, but to take the person itself. And what I a lot of times do is just stay a long time with the persons, you know, to get familiar with the environment, familiar with the person itself, sit down, drink some tea around the fire and get really comfortable with each other. And and then try to document it. I always put my own stamp on it. That's impossible to leave without. But in that way I try to find a balance in the two. But it's a good question, because I'm always struggling with that. Yeah, it has always be sharp on that subject. Yeah.
I'm visiting from California, and I think when people think of headhunters, they think of something very violent, that you're raiding other villages, kidnapping people, bringing them back, torturing them, maybe possibly eating them. How did that work back then? And the other part of my question was, on their tattooing on their face, it looks like they entirely blackened their face in some scenarios. And what method did they do to apply the tattoo? Was it painful? And then the two tattoos you have, can you tell us about them?
Headhunting, yes. It's not a topic like talking about the weather, or, you know, it's like headhunting is something that is like, I used to be very uncomfortable talking about headhunting. In the school, in the convent school where we went to, where my sisters and I went to school, we were the few Konyak people there. And even at that time, our tribe, in the 1989, our tribe had a dispute with another tribe, and there was headhunting going on. The identity of being a Konyak and being headhunters did not make me aware before that. But only at that time, because everybody in the school dining hall would be looking at us and teasing and says, hey, here comes the people who eat human flesh. Here comes the cannibals, or don't tease them, their father and grandfather will come and chop your head off. So I also feel uncomfortable talking about this subject for a very long time. In fact, when we were making this book, to write about it was very uncomfortable. And Peter was telling me, you know, you confront it. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It was about how the society was, the way of life then. It's nothing personal with you. So talking about headhunting, the Konyaks believe that headhunting, the head contains the soul force of the being. So whether in a hunt, like when you kill a deer or a boar or a tiger, we would take the head and put it on display at the entrance of the house. So the head contains the soul force of the being. So likewise, even for human skulls. So we did it for fertility benefit of the village, of the crops, of life. And then the men would get the tattooing then on the faces. Because we have to spill blood for blood. Also headhunting, but that does not mean that we go around chopping anybody's head. You know, it was organized retaliation for breach of alliance or dispute.
But also the shamans had a say in it, eh? The omens had to be the right.
Yes, but the shamans had to predict if the headhunt is going to be a success or not. So they do some rituals before a headhunt. And if the shaman does not see that it is going to be successful, then they wait the whole for a week or two or maybe a month or half year. And only when the prediction is correct, then they go on a headhunt. And of course, tattooing was painful. I asked my grandfather about whether it was painful, and he said, "Are you mad to ask if the whole facial tattoo is painful or not?" It is absolutely painful. But like I said earlier, an individual had no choice. That was the way of life then. Everybody, because people walk around without their clothes, so the body was like a canvas. It displays, it was a beautification. It displays a person's status in the society, the achievements, the cycle of life. My tattoos, this is all Konyak pattern. So this represents we have a tiger spirit tattoo. Tiger spirit tattoos are only obtained by powerful chiefs. It cannot be got by even a warrior or a common man. They say that we believe in the spirit of the tiger is related to the chief. So this is a pattern of the tiger spirit, but it is not on the back because it is on my hand. Yeah. But each tattoo pattern has I'm getting it when I feel I'm ready for it. So these are all Konyak patterns, geometric patterns.
There's headhunting all over the world, in South America, in the Congo, and in Southeast Asia. And even in Britain, it used to be. And the thing is, even in the Bible, they said the body is given by Elohim, and the head is given by Lucifer, the axis of the world. So to take the head off is some kind of purification. And I'm interested in what is the real reason behind it, because there's many tribes in Africa just use it as a fetish, the Minangkabau, and in South America, and they shrink their heads. It's very interesting. Why the head? Because if you look at the old ancient stuff from India, they have the body with just growths out of the head. There was no head. It came later. The head came later. So I think it maybe was to go back to when man was in the stage from Atlantis. So I wondered what was the real reason, not who was chosen, because that's always the same, but the reason that they separated the head, if you know. Thank you.
For that, I cannot answer whether there's other meaning, but our belief is for fertility benefit. Like we are keeping the skull of the mithun or buffalo or wild boar or tiger in the house that displays the status and also fertility. So likewise for human beings as well.
Yeah, hi, this is Sanjay Hazarika here. You must have been deeply conscious during this deep dive ethnographic research exploration that you were really also following in the footsteps in a way of Hammondorf, you know, many years ago, who is a fairly controversial figure with his work on the naked Nagas and so on. And was that
Cannot hear them well, no? We cannot hear well from here.
So I was wondering if that was really something at the back of your minds when you were doing this. And the other part is that, which is partly you answered, which is that I think the fact that you were able to have this deep entry and the trust of the elders really came from your own background. And not his, but yours, because you are Konyak and from an Ahon's family.
So the question is, how did it feel to retrace the footsteps of...
Well, were you always conscious of the fact that you were following in the footsteps of a very well-known scholar, but who was also deeply controversial for the work he did, because many of the photographs were posed.
Yeah.
And he got other people to pose, to help organize the posing of the pictures.
Oh, Hammondorf. You're talking about the Hammondorf?
Now, Hammondorf was traveling with the great-grandfather of Phejin, and what Phejin, maybe you a lot of times told me that you were going out to your great-grandfather because you were walking the same path.
Yeah.
You actually make the same journey, so a lot of time that was your way in staying in touch with your great-grandfather in somehow.
Yes. Because many of the tattooed elders remember him.
Traveling back in those times was very rare because every village was actually in war with each other, so they built the villages on top of ridges and they didn't get out because it was very dangerous to step out and go around to the field. So traveling through the whole that region was very unique, and her great-grandfather was one of the first who did it as a Konyak.
Can I just make an observation? Firstly, I must compliment you for having put this down so beautifully. But I have had the privilege to serve in that area as well. And I thought two things which came out which I thought needed to be put in perspective. I felt somebody talked about cannibalism and headhunting. I think they were two separate things. Headhunting was what was the lore for the people of Nagas and not really cannibalism.
Yeah.
So you went there, it was, as you said, a boy becoming a man. I think that was the process that happened. So that I thought was the subtle difference needs to be highlighted, that you never were cannibals in Naga Hills, but you were always headhunting as kingmakers or coming to age. The second issue which you mentioned somewhere was about a written script. From my understanding, I think Nagamis, or all the 16 tribes that are there recognized in Nagaland, all have a spoken dialect, but the written script came in because of Christianity. So like the Indian Army has a thing called Roman Hindi, we have a Nagami script which uses the alphabets of the English language, but is the spoken language of what it is. So from what I understand, I think Konyaks also only had a dialect. They never had a written script. I mean, I needed to be corrected in case it wasn't true, because I understood that you had some kind of a written script. And the third thing which I want to tell for all those people who are here, you must go and travel in this part of the world. It's absolutely outstanding. I think the last headhunting happened in 1973. But there is...
2005.
No, 2005 was separate. No, 1973, but 2005 was for different reasons. But I think the beautiful part is that you have there's a village called Lungwa, which sits, half of the building is in Myanmar, and the other half is in India. So when you go from one place to the other, you have to transgress between two countries while you're moving in the same village. So I think it's an outstanding part of the country that you belong to. And thank you very much. But this dialect bit, if you could just clarify, was it a written dialect or was there a written script?
No, our people don't have any written script.
Yeah, okay, so that's
it's just a dialect.
Yeah, but thank you very much.
Yeah, so it is earlier, like I was saying, there's an oral tradition. So knowledge and information was passed on from generation to generation. The men's had a men's club called PAN. After the initiation, rite of passage, they will become members of it, members of the club, and all the teachings of the Konyak life for the men would be in the PAN. Likewise, for the women, there was a women's club called Hyo, where all the girls would gather in a house of one of the girls, and then all the social activities would be taught there. So that is how information was passed on from one generation to another. But because it is an old tradition, and there's no written script, we don't have any information. It's only through word of mouth. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to document that. So talking about Longwa, so our Longwa village, Konyaks are on the Indo-Myanmar border. So we are in Nagaland in India and also in Saigyang division in Myanmar. So we live on both sides. We cross over from one place to another. We don't have a border But now the Myanmar government and also Indian government, I think they recently tried to have a border fence, which the village people, which the tribe opposed because we have our agricultural fields on the Myanmar side as well. So the free movement of people that is going on for centuries is going to be stopped because of this fencing. And I, as a Konyak, it would be easily for me to go and travel and document more villages in the Myanmar side. But with Peter, I cannot go. We'll end up in jail. So that's why we had to go to the Burmese embassy in Calcutta and do the legal way. And we traveled on the Chinwin and went upstream till the Naga areas. But when we reached the Naga area, immigration followed us, asking us what we are doing there, and we said we are trying to document the tattoo tradition of the Konyaks in Myanmar, but they said that we have to go on a package tour. So, yeah. And we had to pay how many dollars?
$4,000.
$4,000.
Per person.
Yeah, and then the guide had to come from Yangon. So we said, let's focus on the Konyaks in India. Let's skip the Myanmar. But I'll go walking again.
So, Phejin, could you just tell us a bit more about the practical tattooing and what they used to use as dyes, and who would be doing the tattooing in the villages at that time?
Oh, thank you for the question. Actually, that is the most important part. Konyak tattoo tradition, the tattoo artists were mostly females. It was done by the Angyas, who were the queens. Konyaks have the system of Ang, which is called we have chiefs. So the chiefs' wives, the Angyas, were the tattoo artists. And the tattoo art was passed on from mother to daughter. So it went on from mother to daughter. But there were also a few male tattoo artists in some parts of the tribe. In some villages, there were also a few male tattoo artists. Now there are two forms of Konyak tattooing. One is through the hand tapping method, and the other is during the hand hammering, just using a single tool. The first one, hand tapping, is with the two tools, and then the second one is just with like a hammer. You do the hand hammering. And we use the ink is from the tuna kalita, or the red cedar, or red mahogany, tuna kalita tree. We cut the tree bark into horizontal stripes and then collect the sap for a week or a few days. And then it becomes a hard resin. And the hard resin is taken, is burnt overnight, and it is covered with a clay pot overnight. And the smoke that collects on the pot is scrapped and mixed with red rice beer, with alcohol, with red rice beer. And so the alcohol, the red rice beer, and then the powdered pigment is from the concoction for the ink. And for the needles, needle comb, we use the thorns from the rattan palm tree. And that is binded into bamboo and plant fibers. Creeper fibers are used to tie the comb.
Hi, Phejin. You took me back memory lane, having served in Nagaland about a decade and a half ago, and been to Mon and Tirap also. And it always felt that these fiercest Konyak warriors were the most gentlest. Let me say that. I haven't had occasion to read your book, which I surely will. Wanted to ask you, in the review which I'd read of your book, in the Hindu, you write about the vanishing, right? You talk about the traditions and how they're dying down literally with all these elders passing away. My question is a bit more general in nature. I'm talking with reference to what about the other tribes, the Chakasang, the Sema, etc., the Tangkhul Naga, for example. What is somebody documenting it the way that you're doing for your particular tribe? Is something happening on that? Because it's going to be a great loss if, you know, if it isn't really documented, and wanted to ask you that. Thank you.
See, that is also the concern that we have, that like how we are documenting on the Konyaks, there are so many other tribes, and the same thing is happening with them. Not must be, is happening right now with them of the culture dying out, many practices. So we, during our interaction with fellow Naga people, or when we meet them casually or in formal talks like this, we try to give them the idea, like the importance of preserving our culture and documenting it. But we find very few people are interested in it.
Hi, my name is Jay. I have a slightly practical question. If I wanted to experience some of this firsthand, is it possible to visit the area where your tribe lives and maybe even live over there for a period of time, whatever it is, a week, 10 days? And if yes, how does one get there?
Sure, you can come, and I would like to host you.
Thank you.
But come with an open mind.
Absolutely.
Don't have anything in your mind already that you have built, because if one comes with an open mind, then you are ready to experience anything that comes your way.
Sure. And so how does one do it? Do you like land in Kohima and then take a car from there, or?
You can fly into Dibrugarh in Assam.
Okay.
We are in North Nagaland.
Okay.
So Kohima and Dimapur, which are the major towns in Nagaland, are in South Nagaland.
Okay.
And I live in North Nagaland.
And what would be the name of the village or the area?
Mon District.
Mon District.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Shiyong village.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Hi. So I was wondering. You mentioned nobility earlier, and I was wondering about how how social status in society is ascribed, whether it's inherited by like your progeny, or is it based off your success in headhunting?
I didn't get your first line.
I was wondering about how social status in society is ascribed. So like, for example, if a chief has a kid, will the kid of the chief be of higher society as well? Or will it be based off success in headhunting, or?
Konyak society is, we have our chief system. Now this is hereditary. It goes on from one generation to the other. But only the eldest son of the chief can inherit his father's status. And that also, his mother has to be from another powerful family. But in the case of tattooing, the warrior, the person who has taken more heads in the battle, has more beautiful tattoos than even the chief. The chief don't have say there's a certain pattern which a chief has for centuries, but for the tattoo, for the warrior, he has the choice of which part of body he wanted to have.
Also, what about shamans? Are they trained, or like?
Pardon?
For a shaman, you said they predicted whether headhunting would be successful or not. A shaman.
Yeah.
You said, are they of higher society too, or are they trained?
No, shamans, you have to be born.
You have to be born.
Yeah, inborn with it.
Thank you.
So I'm visiting the festival from the Middle East, and I'm familiar with Myanmar having some issues with minorities, and I wondered how the Konyak people get along with the government there.
With the minority? For our people, we identify ourselves with our village first, our clan. Our universe is our village. It doesn't make much difference for a villager identity. First, the society is the village, and then only the tribe. But talking about the differences is when we come, like me, I'm traveling out or going to university outside. It's a lot of difference because most people in mainland India are not aware about us, about the culture. Even in the neighboring state of Assam, for example, like people look at us like a different, very differently. So sometimes there's an issue about this, being different from the rest of the population.
Thank you.
Any questions over there? Yeah. We have 7 minutes left, so.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. This is my question to Phejin. How are you going to maintain your tradition to make sure that the stories that you have do not actually die out? Of course, you're writing a book, you've taken the pictures, but how will you keep it alive in your community? Is there something that you can do to keep it alive so that we don't lose a part of our Indian stories?
Not sometimes, most times it feels like we are walking against the current. We are swimming against the current. Most of the time it feels like that. But our contribution is this book, but it's not going to stop with this book. Like Peter said earlier, we are going to translate it into Konyak dialect so that our people read our book, the stories, so it is not lost. If they cannot, most of them cannot read English, so they can, at least if it is written in the Roman script, it can be in the tribal dialect. And then for the children, most important is we want to have a children's illustrated book with the poems, songs, and sayings about Konyak life. So that is what we are trying to do with this project. And likewise, even with other activities, we are trying to revive like a poetry tradition, which is also another thing that is fading. So we have documented, like, had a workshop with a traditional Konyak potter, and documented all the tools that were used, the procedures that was done. And when we interact with the headmasters and principals of the local schools in Mon, I had an interaction with them. I encouraged them that why don't you have a storytelling competition in the school, like local folk tales, like a painting competition of local culture. And likewise, why don't you organize a poetry workshop? Why don't you organize like so many things that is in our tradition, which can be organized through the school level. But one principal told me that the church, in fact, there was a school that had a storytelling competition, and then some members from the church came and says, no, you're not allowed to speak anything about the old tradition. Yeah, even recently there was a youth camp, a Baptist Sunday school youth camp in our village, and all the children were like busy singing songs and sayings which are not from our tradition. And I was wondering, like, there's nothing that is about our society. There's nothing about our culture. And all the youth have been brainwashed into thinking that whatever our ancestors' practice was, it's bad. And looking towards the Western culture or mainland Indian culture or the modern culture is good. But what we have is something to be ashamed of. So very few very few people are taking initiative to do this. I wish there were more people from different tribes.
Thank you. But just linked to that question, then how many of your tribes then have remained animists, or has everybody converted to Christianity?
Everybody converted.
Everybody's converted to Christianity. Okay, thank you.
I think only one question can be asked because it's already 3 minutes.
Hello, I know that with the Nagaland in India and in Myanmar, the weaving has been revived and has had a lot of input in sorry? So I was wondering, with weaving from Nagaland in Myanmar and in India, there's a lot of interest in it and its revival, and I wondered if with the storytelling it might be an interesting route to take it through the weaving, which is from your culture, with keeping the message alive through the tradition of weaving as well.
Weaving is another thing that is what to say. It's going on very strong. Weaving. People like to look good, so at least for fashion, you know.
Yeah.
The weaving is going more and more like hyper developed than what it was.
Yeah.
But the stories and the old tradition, it's all dying out. But the weaving is going on very strong.
But through the weaving, maybe the development of the awareness of the stories could be actually taken through that route, through the outlets of the weaving.
No, they don't see it that way.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
think, yeah, it's only less than 2 minutes left. Any last words from our speakers?
Now, the strong thing about this book is that because I did research and then you come to anthropologists, ethnographers, and they write of the cognacs from the outside point of view. I think the strong point of this book now is it is written from the inside. And they get really an inside look at the cognac culture and how it is.
And then I found a sketch of my great-grandfather from the Cambridge Museum archives. By chance, the director of the Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology, we were working on an exhibition, cognac carving to be taken to the UK for an exhibition called Another India. And when we were working on that project, he went through the archives and he sent me an email immediately and says, "Look who I found." And it was my great-grandfather. The drawing was done in the early 1920s by JH. It was in JH Hutton's collection. And it is on this book. With their permission, we could use it in this book. Yeah, this sketch. Wow. Yeah. So it is in their tattoo section there in the archives, and here we are writing about tattoo.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So with their permission, we could use it, and in exchange for this, they used 2 photographs of Peter for their exhibition in the Cambridge Museum.
I think, yeah, we all enjoy the sessions. Thank you for our 2 speakers, especially Phejin, and thank you for all the participants. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot for such an enriching session. Our authors would be available at the book signing area. So if you have any books to sign, you can go to left of Darbar. And between Batak and Darbar is the book signing area.